in 1 second it should be, and we're live. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much to everyone who's tuning in live or watching the recording. Welcome to another episode of the Power Panel. Before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to mention that today's Power Panel is brought to you by MYOS MD, the cutting-edge nutritional supplement designed to combat muscle loss and support healthier aging. Powered by Fortitropin, a natural bioactive compound that has actually been clinically shown to enhance muscle growth and reduce anabolic resistance, MYOS MD is changing the way we think about muscle health. If you'd like to learn more about MYOS MD or any information pertaining to muscle health, you can go to myosmd.com. Alrighty, so into today's topic, we have two experts with us. Not only one, we have two. So first, before we hop into our questions all about longevity and personalization of medicine, would love to, have a little background on both of you. If you could share a little bit about, what brought you to today.
I'm sorry, I had some connection issues. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to first introduce you to our audience for those of the viewers who don't know who you are. If you could just give a little, mini background on yourself.
Yeah. Miguel, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
So my name is Carlos. This is my brother, Miguel. And we're the founders of Medical Health Institute. We are a longevity medical practice with a focus on human performance. And so we go as basic as standard supplementation and targeted supplementation for wellness, and as high as genetically engineering peptides for function, specific for the individual and even treating disease. So, there's a whole gamut of the things that we do, but this was a lifestyle way before it ever became a business, and we're fortunate to call it that. But we live, eat, and breathe the lifestyle when it comes to longevity, performance, or what's now known as biohacking or anti-aging. I kind of hate that term. We're competitive athletes, if you will. And so performance is a really important part of our life, specifically recovery. We work with patients of every age group, sex, category, background, teaching them more than anything about the lifestyle that would support being their best selves. And, that's kind of in a nutshell, like what we do.
You waiting for me?
Yeah, Miguel, do you want to talk a little bit about your background too?
He pretty much covered it all. It's to encapsulate everything. We help people look, feel, and perform their best by enhancing their quality of their life now and into the future. And I would consider us what you would say is a true biohacking medical practice with real results. Where what is biohacking, right? It's literally science, meaning self-mastery. Cold plunge, red light, grounding, EMF, right? Filtering blue light, supplementation, hormones, strategic use of peptides, right? Hormetic stress. You got track and analyze sleep, genetics and methylation and detoxification, cardiovascular health, gut health. Show me a practice that specializes in everything under one roof, right? And when I mean under one roof, unfortunately, you can't have it all. And if you do, what we have found, every clinic that offers it all, they're okay or medium in what they do, right?
Yeah, they're a master of none.
And unfortunately, the way we've done it is our bread and butter, and what we focus and what we master is hormones, peptides, targeted supplementation, plus a lifestyle, right? When it comes to the gut health, the cardiovascular health, even genes, right? And genetically engineered peptides. We teamed up with what we consider are the best in the industry, and where we work as a team in partnership to help our patients. And that's how somebody can come to us and not even understand what the difference between carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are. And we will start from that level basic or to a level of a PhD, right? And the last thing I would say, that it's unfortunate. The statistics show that half of what a practitioner will learn in medical school by the time he graduates, it's either outdated or just dead wrong. The problem is what half is wrong. And, most medical practitioners that we have met, unfortunately, traditional medicine doesn't pay or reimburse you for holistic medicine. What I mean by that, if you look at our national debt, 18% of our GDP comes from chronic disease. 90% of our healthcare dollars are spent on diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases, and only 9% is spent on preventive and longevity. And it's unfortunate, right? It's the way the game is built. So I would say that, as I said, I consider we are the first that I know of very few clinics that are out there doing what we do, which is a biohacking medical practice.
Absolutely. So, let's think about, a lot of the patients that you work with. So what are some of the most common clinical imbalances or, issues with lab markers that you see in your patient population?
I think it's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think before we get there, Dr. Diaz, I think we have to discuss two things. And this is kind of like the foundation to whatever a patient comes into our practice. And by the way, we're very proud and very humbled to say that, going back to what Miguel said, we have teamed up and, have made amazing relationships with what we consider are the best in our industry. And so we not only treat regular patients, but we also have under treatment PhDs, scientists, and over 65 different doctors from many different, cardiology to urology. I mean, you name it. So, but I say that to say that, to your question, the bigger conversation or the deeper conversation are the two things that most doctors or no doctor is talking about when they see a patient. Because when we get a patient, that is hormonally deficient, that'll be the first answer to your question. Most people that come to us are hormonally deficient, right? And there is a hormone deficiency across our planet, and there's a reason for that, right? Most people now are kind of, crediting that to old age, which we refuse that notion, right? And so the problem is that the biggest question that we get when we get a guy, for example, that comes in with testosterone levels, a 25-year-old that comes in with testosterone levels adequate for an 80-year-old, the biggest question is why? Why is this happening? More importantly, why is this happening to me? And in general, and again, I don't mean to offend any practitioner because we are very grateful for the work that they do and the fact, we're very good at acute medicine. We're very horrible at treating chronic disease. I think we know that by now. And the reason is when people ask this question, they either get a blank stare or they get an answer that is just inadequate. But there is an answer. We do know that there are two factors that are killing our health more than we would ever dare to imagine. And that is endocrine disrupting chemicals, which every human being listening to this podcast or live is being subjected to in massive quantities. These are things that you're absorbing through your skin in the form of shampoos, soap, lotion, makeup, deodorant. I mean, the list goes on and on. You're eating it and drinking it, right? We're now being told that we're eating about a credit card's worth of plastic a month, right? And then you're also absorbing a lot of them through air particulates in your AC vents, right? And as the name suggests, these are endocrine disrupting chemicals. They kill your hormone balance. So our cells are walking around being poisoned by chemicals that, from an evolutionary perspective, it's kind of brand new, right? Most of these chemicals weren't even around 40 years ago, right? So you're running around getting poisoned. Your cells are trying to make up for this. And then the scarier portion is that we've now had an 80% loss in the micronutrient level and trace mineral elements in the soils all over the planet. So short of you moving to a different solar system, food is no longer enough. And as we were discussing, Dr. Diaz, off camera a little bit before we got on the live, doctors as a whole, I mean, their training on nutrition is virtually zero nutritional training. When you become a doctor, you may have 1 or 2 hours optional, right? Now we know that nutrition is not enough. And now we have this whole world of supplementation that would make up for it, but doctors don't believe in supplements. So imagine the gap that we're going to have in treatment. So when to answer your question, what is the typical thing that we see is nutrient deficiency and hormone replacement at the heart. And then there's what branches out from that, which is catastrophic.
Absolutely. So I would love to ask you both about what you think about what's going on with the protein conversation right now. There's so much discussion, whether it's on social media, you name it, about protein. There's so many new consumer product goods or supplements that are, talking about increasing your protein. So would love to hear your perspective, especially as you are, experts and leading a clinic that does focus on longevity.
Cool. You want to take that one, Miguel?
Well, just to echo and to
circle
full circle with what he was talking about, endocrine disrupting chemicals. That's how Medical Health Institute came to inception into life, which is we specialize in hormones, right? We started as a hormone clinic, but now we've turned into this thing where it's just so much more than hormones. Hormones are just a tool of the tool belt. So I think there's very key, important, scientific, historical moments that I'll just recap them really quick that people should know about. First of all, hormones have been around for the last 85 years, since literally the mid 30s and 40s. 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, which 45% of women who were menopausal were on hormone therapy. After the Women's Health Initiative, which was a flawed study, basically stating that hormones could cause breast cancer, uterine cancer, all these type of cancers, right? Then they were discovered that it was incorrect. And the reason for it is because they were using females' horse urine, which has 9 metabolites. Out of those 9, only 3 are natural to females, which is estradiol, estrone, and estradiol. The rest are synthetic or from another species that don't belong in us. And number 2, the bioidentical hormone progesterone was synthetically used as progestin. So every single study that you will look at shows that these synthetic hormones is what led to these issues of cancer. But bioidentical hormones have never been proven to have any of those issues, right? Then 2016, the Mayo Clinic consensus statement and Harvard University on testosterone, which is a global public health concern. And to give you some context, it was made out of 4 different specialties: cardiology, andrology, urology, and endocrinology. In 17 countries, over 26 medical and research institutions. And the consensus statements is basically testosterone is not only safe and logical, but also effective and scientific, right? Then Shauna Swan, who's basically the world's most respected endocrine disruptive chemical specialist and has a PhD in reproductive epidemiology. She showed that in the last 57 years, men on the planet have lost more than 59% of their sperm count. And sperm and testosterone they're part of the same tree, right? Just different branches. And then the last one was 2018, the American Urology Association finally showed that having low testosterone under 300 puts you at risk of cardiovascular risk, right? So these are just very important scientific moments in life. I mean, scientific and historical moments in our career that we were fighting this from the beginning, right? Saying, oh, hormones, the stigma, especially coming from bodybuilders, and that it creates cancer and cardiovascular risk, have completely been debunked, right? So that being said, if men and female don't have enough testosterone, then there is going to be some form of anabolic resistance, which is like saying osteopenia, and eventually you end up with sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass. Why do you think that's happening? Well, starting with the fact that most male and females have low testosterone, and that is the key initiator to stimulating the body to produce protein synthesis. So it's like you go from manufacturing 1,000 cars, as we age, we go down to 100 cars. We can no longer build protein fast enough. And not to mention, one of the hallmarks of aging, dysregulated nutrient sensing, which if you look at the 16 of them, One, out of dysregulated nutrient sensing is loss of proteostasis, which what MYOS MD or fortitropin do, they reduce the overactivation of ubiquitin proteasome pathway. What does that mean? The older we get, the more activation of ubiquitin we have, so the demolishing crew starts to break down muscle tissue, or in general proteins, faster than you can rebuild them. And then loss of proteostasis is one of the hallmarks of aging, meaning your body can no longer process damaged proteins fast enough and rebuild. So when you add it all up, tally it all up, because of the endocrine disrupting chemicals, as a consequence, has affected our hormonal production, or to maintain a healthy hormone production, has affected the inner parts of how our cells work, leading to these hallmarks of aging that have made our bodies, and at a cellular level, dysfunctional. So people can't, not only cannot build protein fast enough, but they can't regenerate overall fast enough. And this is how the exponential aging process has accelerated, which leads to death. And to close it out, on my part, aging has been classified as a disease with a diagnosis code R54. So basically, the faster you age, the faster you break down, the more prone you are to disease. What we want to do is slow that aging process down, right? So you can regenerate like if you were 20 years old, no matter what age category you're in.
Yeah, and I would simply add, Dr. Diaz, for whoever is listening to what Miguel just said, the key distinction in what he said. Notice how he didn't say, because your question was, how do we feel about protein? I feel like, from a general sense, I think that this is the most misunderstood and mistaught concept in all of longevity, biohacking, fitness for the last 30, 40 years, especially with marketing. So, but the key distinction of what Miguel said for the listener is, notice how he didn't talk about eating protein. He talked about making protein, which is the biggest distinction that people have to make. I always say, look, you don't eat your hair or eat your nails so that you can make more of it. So what makes you think that eating a chicken wing or a cow's butt is going to make you more muscle? It just doesn't work that way. But we've been taught that eating a bunch of steak is going to make us more muscle. I mean, that's 1% of what protein actually even does, right? You need protein for your hair, for your skin, for your bones, for your muscles, for your hormones, for your digestion. You need to make hundreds of thousands of proteins every day that are not just muscle proteins, the myosin and actin proteins, but for everything else. And eating protein is not the most effective way of manufacturing protein. Second really cool distinction that Miguel made was the ubiquitin pathway, right? So, after 30, we know that we have we start with and I'm just going to simplify it in layman's terms to what Miguel just said, is we begin a sort of rate of muscle loss, of muscle breakdown. I always like to consider muscle like your money, like income, and age and time as your tax bracket. Unfortunately, as we age, our tax bracket goes up, right? So we know that by giving you the ingredients for you to make more protein, right, we can have you make muscle and protein like a 25-year-old. But if you're in your 60s, that doesn't mean that you are not subjected to your rate of muscle loss, right, to your tax bracket. So the amazing thing that, MYOS is now bringing to the table, the way that I like to think about it, MYOS basically decreases your tax bracket from 30% to 8%. I mean, these are, paraphrased numbers. These are not the exact numbers, but it's just the way that I like to think about it. So not only is there a connection between, you need to understand how your body actually makes protein and muscle, but also the strategy in order for you as you age to retain, keep more muscle of the ones that you are making. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard that kind of comparison before, but I think that makes it so plain and simple for anyone listening.
Yeah.
So you mentioned MYOS MD, so I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience using it with patients and what sort of outcomes you've observed. You just mentioned muscle retention, super important. So what have you observed in terms of muscle retention, strength, and any metabolic improvements?
Miguel, I don't know if you want to interject, but I'll just.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, their data is pretty damn clear. And now they actually added eggshells to it, which is by another company that actually has hydrolyzed collagen type 1, 5, 4, I forgot exactly which ones, chondroitin sulfate and hyaluronic acid, which is what makes the extracellular matrix of the scaffolding that holds you up, right? So going back to the product though, their biggest two studies, which are randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, pretty much the gold standard, show that 60 to 75-year-old individuals had a 18% increase in muscle mass over 21 days. Muscle protein synthesis, right? The rate at which your body can make these amino acids into building blocks and create proteins. And just for people to be clear, because most people are confused, we need 20 amino acids. So it's like saying for your body to make protein, there's 20 amino acids, but there's thousands and thousands of words. So how do you code them, right? So the point is there's an 18% increase, right? And in their second study on 18 to 21 years old, I think it was 3 months, they had a 300%.
They were working out just to make a distinction.
Yeah, they were working out 3 times a week, but they measured their lean body mass. So if you had a DEXA scan or in body measurement, they measured the lean body mass, and they increased 300% their lean muscle tissue.
Yeah,
which is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. Right? And on the older generation, just so we can notate the data, because this is why we started using it. When you get an 18 to 22% on average increase on your muscle, protein to muscle synthesis ratio in 3 weeks with zero exercise, I mean, that's a hell of a statement, right? And so to answer your question, on our patient base, we started using it not only personally, but in our patient base and specifically in the older age category. I mean, the results were incredible, right? People were calling us back, noticing the differences, even people that had been on therapy for a while, guys on testosterone who were used to having their muscle mass, and they saw significant differences not only in their acquisition of muscle or their maintenance of muscle, just kind of different look in the mirror, more muscular look, but also when it came to certain like nagging injuries, right? So, because with injuries, especially post-op, what we found is that myostatin elevates in the body. So by reducing myostatin, healing, obviously progresses faster. So we saw an incredible return on the what I would say the demand for the product without being prompted, right? Because there's one thing, if I tell you all of this, you're going to get really excited. You're like, oh my God, all people heard was increase muscle gains by 300%. I'm getting it, right? Or if you're in the 60 to 70 category, oh my God, I get 22% more muscle with no exercise. That's for me, right? And so then there's that initial quote unquote advertisement and then impulse buy. But then what we were impressed by was the unprompted refill requests, right? So obviously this was working. And, from a general standpoint, people are kind of like 50-50 about supplements. That, because most supplements you're not going to essentially feel, and you should not feel, just like you're not going to be more energetic after a meal, right? Unless you haven't eaten in a year or a month. But from a general standpoint, you're not going to feel supplements. So the fact that we were getting all these refill requests unprompted told us, and then we followed up, hey, what do you notice? And be like, oh my God, this product really works. So, we were really happy to see the patient outcomes as a result of the data.
I would additionally add one more thing about the 40-tropin, the reason why I like it so much. That's why the biggest thing that it has, aside from everything, again, it comes down to this ubiquitin proteasome pathway. Yeah. So ubiquitin proteasome or proteostasis, they're like cousins, right? Ubiquitin is like a gun tag that basically labels damaged proteins or unused proteins to go get recycled by the proteasome, which is the shredder that breaks down proteins, recycles them into 3 things: amino acids, fat, cholesterol, and sugar, right? So the amino acids go and get rebuilt and packaged by the ribosome inside the cell. The cholesterol and fat get packaged and remade by the endoplasmic reticulum for hormones and membranes, cellular membranes, right? And then the sugars get sucked up by the mitochondria for more ATP production. So by you actually reducing the overaction of this ubiquitin protease pathway, you're not only improving the way your body is allowing you to build muscle, but how to utilize other nutrients.
Yeah.
Because by fixing the shredder machine and getting things to go where they need to go, in the end, you get a much better output, not only for muscle, but for energy and hormone production, right?
Yeah.
So I like to say at this point, we're a cellular medicine practice, because if you narrow it down, it all goes back to the organ systems within the cell, right? The endoplasmic reticulum, the lysosome, the DNA, the whole structure of what holds together a cell. If you can fix those little particles by getting the toxins out, putting the right nutrients in, and stimulating the cells in a specific way, then you'll restore the balance, the homeostasis of the cell. So when you zoom out, these hallmarks of aging are pretty much gone. You're not being burdened by them, because you fix the cell. You fix the cell, you fix the system.
Yeah. Well said.
Incredible. And so, looking to the future, what are you most excited about when it comes to the personalization of medicine? Especially, you both kind of work at this bridge of like nutrition, proactive health, preventative health, but also how are you incorporating AI-driven technology or other things that are on the horizon?
Let me answer the first question. What excites us is what you just said. The use of AI. I think AI still has a lot to learn, but I think we're making leaps and bounds in what is going to be able to do for us from a diagnostic perspective and treatment perspective, especially when you combine this with genetics. So what Miguel and I are, I think, and I'll speak for him. He can correct me later. Is this area of this bridge between AI and genetics, where we can really dig deep into the cellular makeup of someone. And, instead of driving blind now and, throwing things on the board to see if they stick, we can now look into the actual genetic expression of someone and be able to switch these switches on and off the way that they need to work in order to get the cells, of what Miguel was saying, the organelles of the cell, to function exactly how they were designed to function. Because that's the big thing. Because of environmental factors, because of nutrient deficiencies, and because of this modern existence that we're now subjected to, this computer, EMF, all this stuff that he mentioned earlier, right? The design of our cells are working against its original design. And so, mutations, and this is how disease happens, and blah, blah, blah. So the fact that we now have AI at our disposal, and the progress of technology into genetics, and being able to manufacture not only products like peptides and now even supplementation that is genetically tailored to somebody, I think that is the next wave of health optimization to come. That's why we got involved more than 3 years ago with this stuff, because we know that the future was coming. And the cool thing about me and Miguel doing this together is that we are brothers. So same mother, same father, right? And genetically speaking, although we look very different, we like different things, we have different emotional responses, we react very differently to the same medication at the same dose. From a genetic perspective, because we've taken many of genetic tests, we're almost identical. There's very little degree of separation genetically, and yet we do have differences. So the ability, we've kind of filtered out companies. The great genetic companies are the ones that make up for those differences, whereas you have other genetic companies now on the marketplace coming up that are designing products, but then Miguel and I will get the same product. Now we know what category of genetic company that is. So, to answer your question, I'm sure Miguel has something to add, is for us, the more exciting thing is the ability to have AI and genetics combined.
Yeah, I would definitely add AI in general. I'm really enjoying it because it's fact checking everybody.
Yeah.
You can no longer talk crap or say some bogus thing, because all it takes is for you to speak to your AI for a second. Obviously, if you know how to cross-reference, you can get to the truth really fast. Or also, as a medical practitioner, like not ourselves, but just in general, as a medical biohacker, right, I can narrow down and cross-reference information or get to the crux of things much quicker rather than having to read and search. It can really point me to what I need to read to understand specifically what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
That's number one. So I think it's going to give more transparency, and it's going to elevate our learning to a next level, right? If we were learning at a 100% rate, now we're going to learn at a 500% rate because we can get to information so much faster, right? It's basically, it has a PhD in everything, right? And in every specialty of medicine. Again, if you know how to prompt it and you know how to create projects, you can get anything you want. So in general, it's going to make medicine better. Number two, the biggest thing that aside from that I think is going to be the most and the biggest breakthrough in medicine, the truth is that unfortunately, when we go to the doctor, and whether it's a synthetic drug, for cholesterol, proton pump inhibitor, or whether it's a vitamin for prophylactic approach, unless we know your genetic makeup, meaning the 6.4 billion nucleotide letters that we have and how they're organized to see how your genes are actually reacting to every ingredient, we're kind of just throwing the kitchen sink at things and seeing if there's symptom resolution, right?
Yeah.
A pill for an ill approach. And instead of treating symptoms, we want to start treating systems. So I'll give you an example. We're using a company called SNP Nutrigenomics. First company that we have found. There's many out there trying to do what this company is doing, but this is the one that for us has the most validated clinical research for every single micronutrient they're using to make the first genetically engineered multivitamin. So they look at 103 genes from all the methylation cycle genes to detoxification to energy to gut, etc. So for example,
detoxification, all that.
For example, I have a VDR APA1 gene. What does that mean? The mucus lining of my intestinal wall doesn't regenerate fast enough. So if I got an infection and my doctor tells me to take antibiotics, I throw all those bombs in there. I completely demolish my microbiome, which is literally just as important as your brain, and it's literally the pharmacy that produces everything. You wipe it out. Now I'm completely vulnerable, and I can start growing all these pathogens, weakening my immune system and affecting every biological system because I don't have the gene to repair it. So what does that mean? If a doctor knew that, he would understand that if I took a round of antibiotics, immediately after, I would have to do some gut restorative program with spore biotics, probiotics, prebiotics, and everything that I can do to nourish and rebuild my gut. Yeah. So for somebody that doesn't have this gene, for example, my brother doesn't have that gene, he can take antibiotics and be back to normal, right? Because his body has the protein coding genes to regenerate these things. Then, for example, we have the anti-HFR mutation. So we don't produce enough catecholamines, which can lead to insomnia, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, focus issues. And unless you're treating the homocysteine, the homocysteine is a byproduct of the gene being dysfunctional, right? You have all this homocysteine, now you're causing scarring of blood vessels, increasing blood pressure, inflammation, right? And putting you at a 50% increase of neurodegenerative diseases if your levels are above 15. And the list goes on. I just said 2 genes. Imagine the other 22,000 protein coding genes that we have. So if we just understood how every gene worked for every individual, we would know precisely what you would need to take in the sequence and dosing that your body would actually tolerate. Yeah. And that's what I love about AI.
And to put it into perspective, like in real life, because, Miguel's talking theoretically and he's very correct. But what you're seeing out on the field is this. We mapped out the genome, what was it, early 90s?
2003.
Yeah, late 90s when Clinton was in office, 2003 was when the news came out, right? And what we were told at that time was what? Oh my God, we are going to see this wave of technology and treatment of disease and, lowering of disease. And what happened? Nothing. I mean, you go to a regular doctor right now and you talk about, hey, what about my genes? They're like, yeah, we can't do anything about that. You can't affect your genes. Well, we know that that's not true. Number two, they also tell you, no, we don't do that here, right? So what is really exciting, and what my message would be to doctors out there, especially if you're a young doctor, is get into the field of genetics and master it, because this is where it's going, right? And this is where it should go. And this is what we should master if we are going to treat people precisely and uniquely. So Miguel mentioned something of a nutritional company that we use. We also use another company that we're associated with that maps out 22,000 genes. So we're now looking at you as a human being, and we can affect those genes. So when he was talking about AI, this is a 62-page report on 22,000 genes, but more importantly, how those genes are expressing, right? You load this up into ChatGPT and it finds the little holes and personalizes things for you based on your genes, so that you're not spending money on the things that you're already strong on that don't need stimulation. But more than that, take care of the ones that are subpar, or the ones that, like Miguel said, that your body just can't code for it. Like there's nothing Miguel can do. I mean, there's strategies now to, affect his gut lining, because he doesn't have he has to support the gene that is faulty, right? And MTHFR, if you don't do something to address MTHFR, you will pay the consequences of that down the road. So ignoring it, brushing it under the rug, or just saying that genes cannot be affected is just misleading and stupid. So what we have now is this wave of technology, information, and intelligence that can aid us in helping patients and ourselves.
Oh yeah, I would add one little small detail. The average consultation through insurance lasts how long? 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops. You don't think that patient walks out of there with questions for the most part a lot of times? Wait, I don't know. Are you speaking? Because we can't hear you.
Oh, I just said or less. Yes.
Right. So the point is, you walk out of the other. Oh, wait, hold on. I forgot this question, and this question, and this question. So now you're left up in the air, right? Now you can grab the transcribed. Basically, now the AI transcribes the entire consultation. You can plug it into your, again, if you learn how to prompt it and put instructions into it, because it can hallucinate, it can do all types of things. It's not completely there, but if you know how to use it and you've been trained, you plug in the transcription, and then you ask your questions, and again, it will get you to the answer, or at least it'll give you some form of answer that you can eventually set up another consultation, go see the doctor, and go even deeper into what's going on, whether it's a disease, whether it's, a preventive strategy, whatever it is, right? People have more power now, which I think that was lacking before, and it's shifting the entire medical model into a more effective way of doing medicine, which is, what did you go into medicine for? To heal. So now we can use AI to help people heal.
It's transparent, and just to kind of add one little cherry on top of what Miguel said, the unfortunate thing is, we live in a world where there's still this sense that, a doctor's word is God's word. And that is both good and bad, right? Because, we do respect doctors and we do respect their training, but we also do understand that they are human and that they make mistakes. Also, training can be faulty. Going back to what Miguel said, what we know today with AI and everything that we, technology, in 5 years, it might be completely obsolete or wrong. This is why it's called a medical practice. We practice medicine. We don't say that we mastered and we've arrived to the black and white truth, right? That's why it evolves. So I think that the really cool thing about AI is that it forces the doctor, to be honest, to keep him honest, but also to keep him on his toes. Because I believe that if you are a medical practitioner, then this should be an ongoing learning, building process where you continue to learn. And the fact of the matter is that because of the insurance, and I'm not going to go into the conspiracy there, but because of the way that the insurance model is set up, most doctors don't open a book on their continuing education after graduation. That's just a fact, right? It's just a pill mill. So, I think that AI gives you the ability to kind of check your doctor and be like, hey, what about this study? Like, did you read this? Did you read that? So it keeps things a little more honest, and it opens it up for a conversation rather than just a monologue of take this, this, and this, and this, and I'm going to prescribe, a statin because your cholesterol is, 190.
Yeah. Doc, and one more to give you context to what he just said. What all that means, if you look at how much the Human Genome Project cost, it took 13 years, $2.7 billion to accomplish. If I had money and I wanted my entire genome mapped out, literally 2007, the first guy that did it paid $10 million. Then in 2015, it dropped to about $1,000 for you to test your entire genome. Today, it's under $100, right? So Moore's law, microprocessing chips keep duplicating every 2 years is irrelevant. Information is now duplicating every 3 months. What we know today, 2 years from now, not 20, 2 years from now is going to be like a quantum jump of 20 years, right? That's why it's so exciting about medicine, because we're, especially in our industry, that we're on the preventive side, on the out-of-pocket, off-label use. Unfortunately, none of the stuff we do is covered by insurance, so very little amount of money has gone into funding for research, right? By having AI and everything that we're doing, there's going to be a lot more funding. There's going to be a lot more clarity about the safety and efficacy of preventive approach, which Big Pharma, unfortunately, doesn't like that.
And we always preach, be your own CMO, your own chief medical officer. Be in control. Don't just do what you're told. Trust, but verify.
Yeah,
and so,
trust and verify.
But AI now gives you that ability to have the control to direct your health and not just listen to a doctor, because like Miguel said, the women's health initiation is it's just one example of many that, because we treat women. And so that pushed women's health back 30 years.
Oh, no. If you look, the statistics show it went from 45% down to 2%. If you look at today, it's up to about 8%. It's never recovered because the stigma about causing cancer is still there. Just like testosterone causes prostate cancer. That was in the 60s by a guy who won a Nobel Prize, who was using alkaline phosphate, some marker that no longer even exists. And because of the levels going up and down on one patient, because 2 were disqualified, so he did it on one patient, so who showed that when the levels elevated, it exacerbated his prostate cancer. And because of that one study with one individual, till today, patients still say, or new patients say, oh, I'm scared that it's going to cause prostate cancer. Even doctors, right? And to close it out, I have already seen patients that tell me they go to their doctor and their doctor pulls out their AI to ask questions. You know what? I think we should encourage that. As long as the doctor knows what he's doing, and again, being able to cross-reference. I know there's even AI platforms for medical research. So it's not just vague, it's specifically intended for whatever specialty you're on. So the doctor can actually give more quality in the short amount of time that he has to the patient.
Yeah. And just like that, Dr. Diaz, like, for example, there was a black box warning label on like cigarettes, causing lung cancer. There was a black box warning on testosterone, which is one of the most important hormones in your body. There was a black box warning saying that be careful because this can cause cardiovascular disease, which we have known for 20 years now that is not the case, right? And just recently, the FDA walked back those guidelines and is no longer on it, but it took them 20 years to do this.
Yeah, right? It was the Finkel and Vaughn study, completely debunked.
To wrap up your question, this is the exciting part about AI, that we don't have to be 20 years to be denied, quality of life saving medication.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of not only empowering the patient, but also empowering the provider. And it needs to be this patient-provider relationship that is empowered on the whole. And just as you said, like kind of summarizing, it's like information plus action is the power. And now we have so much access to information. So it's just the idea of verifying the information, reviewing it, and taking action on it that is really going to provide both parties with power.
Yeah.
So sorry we gave you a very long-winded drink from a fire hydrant answer, but
No,
They're
no,
very passionate
it was
about this.
amazing. You both are a wealth of information. So, as we wrap up, we'd like to thank MYOS MD once again for sponsoring today's Power Panel. As we talked about quite a bit today, fueled by the revolutionary proprietary ingredient called fortotropin, MYOS MD is trusted by healthcare professionals like our guests, Carlos and Miguel, to deliver real results for their patients backed by science. So if you'd like to learn more, you can go to myosmd.com. We have a plethora of other videos and recordings from experts like the ones we spoke to today. And you can also learn about how to bring this powerful solution to your practice. All right, so for those people who are listening to the recording or tuning in live, where can people learn more about the Medical Health Institute?
You can go to medicalhealthinstitute.com. Look us up on Instagram as Medical Health Institute, or our YouTube, which is a vast field of information where we've interviewed the greatest world's experts in every form of medicine, from PhD professors, scientists, doctors. They can go to MHI Life on YouTube.
Okay, well, thank you so much again, and good luck to you. And if you ever need anything from us, let us know.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. And to the listener, God bless and stay healthy.
All right, bye-bye.
Are we done?
Yeah, I'm trying to end the stream. Sometimes it takes a second.
Yeah, you're still